We are 1 week into MSI, and of course, there is already some controversy. So, J&T and I asked the question, is MSI tainted? Of course, that being related to some ping issues. We'll get to that in just a second. And then, some interesting conversation going on Twitter. Treats tweeted out something about a League of Legends World Cup. We get into why we think that's a good idea or a bad idea. And then, of course, there's been a lot of discussion. I think this happens every year with MSI. Should there be format changes? We will get into that. And, of course, we will talk about the group stage that just happened. We got T1, G2, and RNG all going undefeated. This is episode 85 now of the Clown Fiesta podcast with Blue Jay and JNT 250. So, JNT, like I said, controversy, ping issues. Didn't take long, did it?
Yeah, I mean, I remember even talking about this before the tournament started, but we figured that something was gonna go wrong. Cause
not like this though, right? It's like we kind of predicted it. It's like I don't want to go full flex mode and be like, I knew this was gonna happen. I remember saying I thought it was gonna be like a big play, and mind you, that could still happen, by the way. I thought it was gonna be like a big play where there's a lot of controversy around like, oh, that guy wouldn't have messed up if he was playing on normal ping. But this is like, no, we were just giving teams wrong ping the whole time. You want to just explain further and just, I mean, people mostly know, but just for the sake of,
yeah, I mean, so
give us a lowdown.
For the people that didn't know, after I think it was the third day of the group stage for the play-in part of MSI concluded, it was like just before the next day of matches was going to start. So I think it was like 6 hours before day 4 was about to start, somewhere a few hours before then. But Riot came out with an announcement on like their Lolly Sports page, basically discussing how, there's been some issues with regards to the artificial ping that have been created for the tournament to support and quote-unquote level the playing field for the LPL representative who are unfortunately, they did not get to travel to MSI. They're still in Shanghai under, lockdown and quarantine restrictions. But basically, slowly over the course of the first couple of days at MSI, players and teams started coming out and saying in interviews like, hey, like this ping feels weird, or like when we're playing on the official matches, it doesn't feel the same as the practice and the tournament realm that they've been playing. And Riot admittedly came out and said that the ping in the official matches was not equivalent to what was, being created on the tournament realm. And for the tournament realm, that people don't know, that's what teams scrim on, and that's, what teams are going to be utilizing for the majority of their practices. And for the ping and the games to not be, equal for the official matches is obviously a big problem because, it being at 35 ping is a big disadvantage to some teams to begin with, specifically Korea. A lot of people came out and said that for Korea, this could just straight up be a disadvantage because they're not going to be used to playing on 35 ping. Obviously, you have your NA and EU teams who are used to playing on a higher ping. So while that might not be a big of an issue for them, all Korea knows is 8 ping at the max for solo queue. And then like obviously 0 to 5 ping for official matches. But it's just like a crazy situation that it came up in the first place. Like we sort of said, like we didn't want to say that we called it, but we knew that something was going to go wrong. And
it's not just the number of the ping that matter. Of course, it does matter what the ping number is, but it's the fact that you have to adjust to a new ping, right? You're practicing for it to be X ping, and so you want to play on X ping, right? Because every time you get into a new game that's not at, in this case, 35 ping, now you're adjusting as the game is going on to whatever the ping is actually, rather than what it's supposed to be, which is a huge disadvantage, obviously. And so yes, Riot did the right thing of owning their mistake and being like, look, we did this wrong, we're gonna fix it. And we're going to force all the games against RNG because that's the only games where there was an unfair advantage. And every other game, everyone's playing on the same ping. Whether it was 35 or not, at least it was the same ping. Against RNG, they're playing on the 35 ping, whereas everyone else is playing on whatever it is. I don't even know if they've come out and said exactly what it is. I've heard the number 80 thrown around a lot, but I don't know if that's an actual reporting that it was 80 ping or if it was just guesstimated that it was around 80 ping.
I remember reading something like it was like a lot of players were saying it was somewhere around like 75. So I think that's like just from what I remember of like looking at translated interviews and stuff like that, is a lot of the pros, who are playing on this artificial ping said it was somewhere they felt in the ballpark of like 60 to 80. So
yeah. And again, like I was saying, Riot did the right thing. However, they're still going to be under a bunch of scrutiny because like they really dropped the ball here. Like this is a big problem, And maybe it's not total disaster because most of the teams that were supposed to get out of groups got out, but like DFM was technically a favorite to move on and they didn't get out, you know? So I don't know, maybe they have an argument there. I don't know. Like that's a little bit considering they still went 1-5, I think, in their group. Like no one's too upset. Maybe if they were one game short, people would be more upset or whatever. But for the most part, the teams that have a chance to actually win this tournament moved on, so there's not too much like I guess what I'm saying is it could be an even bigger disaster, even though this is to me is still disaster. It could be worse, right?
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, it wasn't like some absurd result happened where like all of a sudden, you see T1 RNG like dropping games, and you
Mm.
see like big mechanical misplays. But even the little things like watching, the people who are doing live viewing, or in Double F's case, he's just like kind of reviewing the games the day after, and I've just been watching a couple of those videos, and like every time a mechanical misplay happens, or like somebody misses a skill shot by like an inch or two, like almost every single time they're like, well, would this have happened if it was like regular ping and not like an unusual like ping, because they're playing on this artificial ping. And it just kind of sucks because just to like pose that question almost every time you see a mistake is like, oh, like would this have happened on 35 ping? Like it's just like a terrible situation in and of itself, let alone having to play the entire tournament on it. And you know sure,
No, it's a good point.
yeah, it's a bit unrealistic to say like maybe DFM makes it if it's on like normal ping or whatever, but
Yeah, maybe
it's just
maybe not, right?
it's just the fact that we have to raise these questions or concerns in the first place is the problem.
Yeah, I totally agree. And we'll get to the is MSI tainted thing in a question. But before we do that, I want to get your take on the RNG statements that came out because there was one really long one, which was far better received by the community on Twitter specifically. And then there was like their shorter statement that was like heavily memed and heavily, like, I don't know, flamed, I guess. I wanted to know if you had any thoughts on those.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like for the people that don't know, like RNG, they released an initial statement on their official Twitter account, which was I think written up by their head coach, who was basically he was just like it was a pretty informal post, and it was kind of
Mm-hmm.
just the head coach giving his thoughts about the whole situation and basically saying how like their day to day is like super random just because of the various lockdown procedures and COVID guidelines that they have to follow from both Riot's end and also, Shanghai's end, and this other aspect of like keeping game integrity intact where they have like a camera in their main
Mm-hmm.
playroom at all times, which they're not actually allowed to go into if they're not playing. And in this post, like the head coach basically said, like, warming up before the games is like not ideal and it's not what they're used to. And that's been the case for the end of the spring split and will continue to go on presumably in the summer split. And if this situation continues to, if this situation still exists by the time Worlds comes around, we'll have to see where we get to at that point. But it was basically, RNG just saying like, hey, like things aren't really going how we want to, and obviously this whole situation with MSI kind of sucks, and we've been doing everything in our control to like make sure that matches are being played fairly and we're following all the rules and whatnot. So I can kind of I get it from RNG's perspective and them sort of just saying like, hey, like we're making sure that we're doing everything right, and we're trying to follow all the guidelines possible. Yet for this situation to still happen, like they feel a little bit hard done by, it sounds like. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, like it wasn't like this was a pool 2 or a pool 3 team who had like very luckily gone like 3-0 in the first 3 games, and like they need those games to make it out the tournament. Like, dude, you're RNG, like you're clearly better than all of these teams. So for them to, I wouldn't say that they're crying a little bit in like these posts, but like for them to say like, oh, it's unfortunate that we have to replay all these games, like, dude, like do you actually have a doubt in your mind that you're not just going to go out and shit stomp these guys again?
Yeah, what I did like about the long statement from the coach was like, I mean, some people will look at it as excuses, like, oh, they're making excuses. I didn't look at it that way. I really appreciated the post because it gave insight to some things that I wouldn't have thought of, right? Like, I didn't know they had to do their own setup with their computer and their audio and stuff like that. I didn't know that they can't warm up in that room, apparently. I didn't know that. And so like there was some things that was like, oh, this is just good information to know because how would we know that unless they told us like what their scenario is? Like I've never been in a 45-day quarantine. I don't know. Like a strict quarantine, by the way. like anyway. So that I really appreciated. The one thing that I will say that I didn't really like, and mind you, benefit of the doubt because this could be just a bad translation, right? It is a translated post. But They said something about like they considered quitting or they decided that they're not going to quit MSI, like they want to finish the tournament. And I read that and I was like, well, yeah, like you better damn well finish the tournament. The whole tournament's been like, I don't want to say warped, but like adjusted for you to participate. So like that was the only part of that post that I was like, huh? Like, what do you mean you're not going to quit? Of course you're not going to quit. So that was like, duh. Where I will say, like you mentioned, like the crying, like they're crying. I only thought that in the other statement, the shorter one, where like the
There's the
RNG
video
Twitter.
and the team huddle.
Yeah, I don't even know. I didn't even watch the video, but just the actual wording of the tweet was, "We will play our matches to the best of our ability." What? Let me pull this up fully because I can't see the whole thing. Okay, so we will play the matches to the best of our ability, even through any unexpected events or unfair treatment, because that's what we at RNG are about. We are RNG, and everyone hopped on the unfair treatment, myself included, because like one unfair treatment, like everyone is like Riot is literally bending over backwards for you to be able to participate. Now, like you don't want to look at it and be like, oh, I'm sure quarantine's not that bad. Like you want to be able to empathize with some of the challenges that they have. But like unfair treatment, I don't know if I would call anything that they've been treated as unfair. And so that that post was kind of hard flamed.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of gave my two
For good
cents
reason.
about this last week, and kind of just how I think that Riot skewing the whole tournament to to the LPL to make sure that they're included, and in a sense decrease the rest of the team's like potential
Yeah.
gameplay. I personally think that kind of sucks, but don't get me wrong. Like, I understand that the Chinese audience is their biggest audience. It'll bring in the most viewers. It'll bring in the most money. So it's not surprising whatsoever. But
I
like,
think the
I
argument though, so
well, we just
sorry.
to run back to that quitting thing. Like when they said that, I was like, oh wow, like that's kind of surprising. But at the same time, like you said, like they've skewed this whole thing in your favor so that you can be included, and for you to just like then just quit feels just kind of like, I don't know. That would just seem to be a bit disrespectful to me.
Yeah, the thing is, it could have been like the reason why the LPL is involved could have been because of money and because of the huge audience, but also a lot of people have made this point, and I do agree with it that MSI is not MSI without the LPL.
Oh,
So
exactly.
like, that's also a reason why, right? It's not simply just oh Riot wanted money, lol. Um, it's also like, look, for this tournament to matter, we need one of the best regions in the world, maybe the best region, right? That always goes back and forth between them and the LCK and so on and so forth. But definitely a team that needs to be there, or a region rather that needs to be there for the tournament to be what it's always been, right? So there's that side of things as well. Now, I was watching Jat and Mark Z talk on Jat's podcast. I don't usually get the chance to catch up on that podcast, but I did because they were doing like daily episodes last week after every day. Um, and they brought up the point like, what if PSG had beaten RNG? Because that's like a possibility, right? That PSG could have beaten RNG. Like, would they have remade that game? And I just thought that was funny because like, no, right? Like, you wouldn't do that, especially because PSG Talon would be the team that had the disadvantage. But like you want to set a precedent as well that like if there's ever any discrepancy issues in ping, you just reset the game no matter what. So I kind of wonder like what they would have done there. You think they would have given PSG Talon the win, right?
Um, I don't
That's a
know.
tough one, right? It's not obvious.
I mean, I think you probably still need to replay it, I guess. Like,
Even if PSG Talon had the disadvantage.
I think so, because then I don't know. It wouldn't seem fair to say that like Istanbul Wildcats and the Red Cannons also then had to play their rematches, but PSG Talon doesn't because they
Yeah.
won. So I
It's
think
a sticky
yeah,
situation, isn't it? Like that's a tough one.
it'd be weird for sure. Like I said, I think this situation would be like it's already bad, but it would be way worse if it was a different team, like one of these playing teams, or even in RNG's case, if they had lost games, or if it was a playing team who had to do this, it was like 2-1 or 3-0, which in their case is probably the dream scenario for them to get out of that group, for them to have to replay those matches and potentially have to run the risk of going 0-3
The
is a really bad risk. So I think we're sort of lucky in this whole situation that it was RNG and that they were already 3-0, and it was pretty clear that they were the best team in this group and that they weren't going to lose to anybody, so they could just play these 3 games again, go 3-0, and we're back to normal. But it would have been a way worse situation if it was anybody else, pretty much.
The ruling that you could make is that you give the option to the team that is at the disadvantage, right? So the team with the higher ping in this case, which is obviously the disadvantage, gets to decide whether they want to remake or not. And therefore, PSG would maybe be like, why would we remake? We already won, right? And whereas the other two teams lost, they would be like, yeah, unfair advantage. I don't know. That's honestly, again, it's a really tough one. You know what it reminded me of though, JT? Do you remember what happened when we played St. Clair?
No.
So for those that don't know, J&T and I were part of the league team for our college that we were at, and we had this tournament where we played our like school rival, I guess you want to call it. And the tournament was a best of three, or the game or the series or
Oh,
whatever was a best
yeah.
of three, and we were up 2-0. And then they came up, the admins of the tournament at their school came up to us and was like, "Hey, do you guys want to make it a best of five because we have time for more games?" And it was like, why would we want to remake the game that we already won? Like we just won 2-0. Why would we? That's what it made me think of
Yeah.
when Jet and Mark brought that up.
I
But
remember
anyways,
that now.
yeah, so stupid, right? But anyway, okay, let's get back to the is MSI tainted thing because obviously all these issues have happened. Now, what do you think people are? Do you think people are going to look back at this tournament with kind of the asterisks on there, or not really?
I don't know, probably just because when it comes like people that are going to be fans of teams and regions, like they're going to try to use every excuse in the book to say like why their team won or lost.
Yep.
And so maybe I think from, the bird's eye view, I don't think that MSI is tainted, but in terms of the fans, I think it is because if RNG or T1 wins, I think the other side, whichever the team that loses, is just going to say, well, if this wasn't played on 35 ping, we would have won.
Yeah, I
'Cause-
guess I'm asking you because I think any normal tournament, it's tainted for some fans because fans will find any kind of way to cope, like they will find any way to discount if their team doesn't win, like some fans, you know what I'm saying?
yeah,
So I guess for your point of view, it's not tainted is what you're saying.
I don't think so, but it also like when Faker came out and said like I think it was like right before the tournament started or after the first day of the tournament that like the meta is going to be different because there's 35
Yep.
ping or there's like artificial ping. I was like, whoa, that's weird. So first of all, you think that the normal perceived level of play is going to be different because you're on this artificial ping, and then second of
Yeah.
all, because you say that the meta is different, does that mean that like T1 is not going to like reveal their hand and just say like fuck this shit, like we're saving all of our strats to ensure that we finish first in LCK in summer and go to Worlds as the number 1 seed, so like they might not play their like hardest. So I don't know, like I think from my perspective, presuming that all the teams are playing at 100% strength, I don't think it's tainted, but from a fan's perspective, it is for sure, because as a fan, when you're a very passionate fan about a team, you're gonna say and do whatever you can to find excuses for when your team loses. Like, and that's just like
Yep.
that's a thing that fan of like anything that you do. Like, if you're a sports fan, esports fan, whatever. Like, when your team loses, like your first instinct is like, oh, it's like they lost because of this bullshit. Like,
Yeah, find me some copium. Yeah, exactly.
like,
Yeah, we've all been there before. So my take is, as long as the rest of the tournament goes by clean, because we still haven't gotten through the rest. Like there could be more ping issues to come. As long as everything goes good from now on, I don't think it's tainted. With that being said, I do have a list of reasons why people might look at it as being tainted. One of them was the thing you just said, Faker saying that like you have to prepare for like a 35 ping meta, right? That's one of them. Caps said in his interview with Travis Gafford, like he sometimes won't go for a play knowing that ping exists. Like that's something that's a little different. Or like there's the RNG thing. Like if RNG win, people will say like, oh, RNG had the comfort of playing not in front of fans, right, and in their own
yeah,
environment or whatever. And if they lose, then RNG fans will be like, well, we had to quarantine for 45 days. So there's a bunch of excuses, like you said, that will always come out of somewhere. But I do believe that if everything goes on smooth from now, then I think that most people will be okay. Not everyone, but most people will be okay with this tournament and will actually say no, that it's not tainted. Although we do have quite a ways to go still to get through the rest of the tournament, right?
yep, that's fair.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, with that, let's start talking about the group stage now, because we've talked plenty about the ping issues, and God, there's a chance that we have to talk more about it next week. We'll wait and see. Let's start talking about the groups. I guess let's just go through group by group. I already told you, J&T, that like, well, for those that don't know, I was away this weekend. I didn't have time to catch up on all the games, so I'll kind of let you lead the discussion on this one. Do you want to go group by group?
Yeah, we'll go Group A first. This
Okay.
was I actually thought like this was the most interesting group mainly. I thought the other groups were pretty clear cut. From the beginning, like even when we went back to last week, I thought it was pretty clear that G2 and RNG were the favorites in their respective group, and that it was, going to follow suit, by presumed regional strength. But going into this one, I think both of us and the majority of the league community had DFM above Saigon Buffalo. I also
Yep.
remember saying to not underestimate the power of the VCS because we haven't seen them in almost 2 years now, because they haven't been able to play international tournaments. And once again, keep in mind that this is the VCS's second seed, not the first seed. Gigabyte Marines, they had a scheduling conflict, couldn't make the event. And I just thought it was funny how, like, Saigon Buffalo said, like, in a lot of their post game interviews and, like, interviews, after the fact, like, we're only the second seed. Like, people should be scared of Gigabyte Marines when it comes to Worlds. And I really hope that we do see both of these teams at Worlds at the end of this year, because I actually think Saigon Buffalo, like, they looked pretty damn good in this group. Like, I think the first game of MSI, if I remember correctly, was T1 versus Saigon Buffalo, and like their bot lane and Shogun and Taki are just like solo killing Keria and Gumayushi on repeat for like the first 5 minutes of the game. I think they solo killed them like 3 separate times, and to see
They
that
came out
first
of the
game,
gate hot.
yeah, it was sick. Like I actually really like the whole bot lane meta that we're seeing right now. It's like super fight skirmishy. It seems like we've really gotten away from like the hyperscaling late game carries of Jinx and Aphelios, due to their continual nerfs, and we're seeing this more like aggressive bot lane style with Tristana, Samira, Kai'Sa's back in the meta. Like that's a champion I really like to enjoy. And Saigon Buffalo, I thought, were like super impressive, and they looked good in almost all of their games, especially their games against T1. Yeah, T1 obviously looked really insane, and was stomping everybody. They went 6-0. I think they have like the fastest game time in the tournament at like 22 minutes. Like they
Oh,
played
really? Eh?
they played 6 games, and their average game time was like 22 or 23 minutes. But when it came to Saigon Buffalo, like I actually thought almost all of their players on their team like are decent individual players. The, like their worst one I think is like maybe their mid laner Froggy, but I thought their top was good. I thought their jungle was good, and I thought their bot lane was actually really good. They were pretty much solo killing everybody in this whole group.
The only thing, so like I said, I didn't see all of the games because I was away. So take this for what it's worth. I did watch the start of the tournament, and I remember Shogun absolutely popping off against T1's bot lane. So that I recall. But when I came back this weekend and I'm trying to catch up on games, I saw that Saigon Buffalo was 3-1 at the time and DFM was 1-3, and I'm like, oh, this is a surprise to me because, like you mentioned, I expected DFM to get out of this group, be number two. So I was like, oh, let me try to catch up on those games. And in those two games that I watched, I think DFM threw both of them. Definitely the second one. The second one was an absolute fiesta in a good way, by the way. There was like 60 kills in a 30-minute game or something like that.
Yeah, that was a banger.
Yeah, that game was great, but like DFM still outplayed them most of that game, and then kind of threw as like they decided to retreat, and they decided to retreat into their jungle against like a Diana and a Set. Like obviously in the jungles where there's like smaller corridors and stuff like that, and that's where it's easier for a wombo to happen. And that's kind of what happened. So like I said, I didn't watch all the games. From what I did see though, I actually thought Saigon Buffalo didn't look that good against DFM, and DFM kind of threw. Do you think that opinion's wrong? If I would have like, do you think I would think different if I would have seen the rest of the group?
No, I mean I think I don't think that DFM, like, it wasn't like Saigon Buffalo wasn't that good and DFM was throwing, because I think DFM was actually also pretty good this tournament. Like, yeah, their 1-5 record doesn't look very good, but
Mm-hmm.
looking back at all 6 of the games, they had early game leads in 5 out of the 6 of them. The only one which they didn't was one of their games against T1. Even in their other game against T1, their one from the second round robin, they were actually up on T1 in the early game, off of like some pretty good ganks from Steel in the early game. I remember they got a 2v2 kill bot at like 3 minutes, and then he turned it into a top dive at like 7 minutes or something. But to me, DFM just, it kind of felt like they fumbled the bag a lot in like the mid and late game, especially in terms of like their over eagerness to team fight and to just like dive on carries, especially in their like last game against A's, where they were up like, I don't know, 8K or 8 or 9K at like 20 minutes into the game and ended up throwing the game because, Steel kind of just kept killing himself to try to kill, A's backline when he was like super fed on the Wukong. So I kind of felt that like DFM and Saigon Buffalo were playing on a pretty similar level for the most part in this group, but DFM just got way too aggressive in the mid and late game, where Saigon Buffalo seemed to pick their spots a little bit better in terms of when to fight, specifically in those two games. Like, yeah, their one game was like a huge fiesta, which, I don't really think there's a whole lot you can take away from that game from like, oh, like, wow, this team was doing this. Like, no, man, they were just like fighting like every single time they were trading like 4 for 2, 3 for 3, 5 for 4. Like, but for the most part, I actually thought DFM looked pretty good, but they were kind of like doing
I
Golden
was just
Guardians
about to
mode.
say that.
Like,
Man, you answered everything I was going to ask you. I was going to say, are they the Golden Guardians? And I was going to say, is their gameplay better than their 1-5 record would indicate? And you
yeah,
pretty
for sure.
much answered both
I
of those.
I think that if you throw DFM into RNG's group, into that group, I think they would actually make it out of that group.
Interesting. Very interesting. Maybe we should get to that group then. Let's
Yeah.
let's talk about that group. What did you think there?
I mean, this was the group that I was kind of wrong about this group, first of all, because I thought that the Red Cannons would be pretty terrible, and I thought that
Me
Istanbul
too.
Wildcats would actually be decent and could maybe contend with PSG Talon.
I also
But
think I thought that, if I remember right. I
it kind of
think I
just,
was on the same page there.
yeah, I don't know. And I prefaced last week by saying that I was mainly basing my opinions off of the previous times that we had seen these two teams on international tournaments, the Red Cannons being at last year Worlds and the Wildcats being at last year's MSI. And it was kind of like the same for the Wildcats in terms of how they look now to how they looked back in MSI 2021. They're just like a super thirsty team that will go for these fights and will contest you in the early game. And usually, if they get the lead in the early game, they'll run with it and do well. But once they start getting rolled, like, it looks really bad.
Mm.
And you kind of, in almost every single Istanbul Wildcats game, except for the one that they won against Red Cannons at the end, or it was, I think, their first match that they played against them. Yeah, never mind. Um,
Yeah, Istanbul
they pretty
Wildcats
much
won
just
their
got
first
rolled.
game and then lost the
Yeah,
last
they
five.
got rolled every other game that wasn't that one game against the Red Cannons.
I see. Was there any, I guess, maybe to focus on the teams that are moving on, because that we're going to continue to see throughout the tournament, were there any players that were the obvious standouts from PSG or from RNG that you would have noticed anyways?
I don't know. I don't actually think that PSG looked that good, and that was kind of the reason why that I said, like, if DFM was in this group, I actually think that DFM would have made it out.
Gotcha.
Like if you put DFM in this group instead of the Wildcats, I think DFM gets out, or even for the Red Cannons. I don't know.
Mm.
I wasn't super impressed with the way that PSG was playing. Just because I think they looked much better at MSI 2021 and Worlds 2021, and this version of them, while I still think it's a good team, like, I just don't think it's as strong as their previous one. And I do think that DFM is actually like a good team, and I think that Saigon Buffalo is probably better, a lot better than a lot of people thought.
Yeah, they lost River and Maple, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, two pretty damn good players.
Mhm.
So that might be. I mean, this weekend I don't got anything going on, so I can promise I'll be able to watch all the games this time, and maybe I'll get to have my own look at what exactly is going on with PSG, because I definitely expect them to get out, but I did not expect them to
Dude, like,
struggle like it sounds like they
their
did.
first game, they got almost perfect gamed by the Red Cannons. Like,
Oh, that's right.
that
I
was like
believe I watched
hella.
that one
I know that
actually.
was hella
That one I
unexpected.
was able to watch. Yeah.
They only got two drakes in the early game. They got no kills, I think they got one tower and two drags. That was it.
Yeah.
Like, they got
Yeah, that's
rolled.
right. True, true, true.
I
All right.
admittedly though, like, they looked decent against RNG in both RNG games that they played. They actually looked pretty close. Maybe not pretty close, but they looked competitive in the first
Yeah,
15 minutes
yeah.
of the game. So it wasn't just like, they were like slightly beating the bad teams and getting rolled against RNG. Because, I mean, their games against the Wildcats and the Red Cannons like weren't anything like special, but they weren't getting shit stomped by RNG. So, like, that's a good sign moving on.
So the takeaway early on in the tournament is that they're playing to the level of their opponents. Is it one of them situations?
Yeah, maybe, but like I
It does
said, I
happen.
just don't think they're as good as 2021 version.
Okay, we'll keep an eye on them this week coming up. Now, Group C. Group C, I did get time to watch. Those were the games that I focused on catching up on the most. I think we have to start with the mid lane matchup, because obviously there was a lot of trash talk coming from JoJo, and I think almost everyone is still in the boat of like, let's not shit on JoJo too much because we like the trash talk, but you gotta, like, he got hard gapped, man. Like, you can't. I don't know what to say. You can't ignore how much of a mid gap there was in this series, and I think that was probably the biggest discrepancy out of all of the matchups in the G2 versus EG game specifically.
Yeah, kind of like like Caps is he's looking pretty good. Him and
Yeah,
Yankos.
he had a really good playoff too, so we expected Caps coming in to look really good, and he didn't slow down at all.
Yeah, him and Yankos, like I said, kind of look like, the season 9 version of them, where basically their entire early game runs through mid jungle and then making plays on the side lanes off of that. And I feel like we're seeing a lot of that just at this tournament in general. Is we're seeing a ton of dives, at the kind of 3:30 and like 5:30 timers. So like right before, in the case of 3:30, it's if you're the red side team, you dive top lane, or if you're the blue side team, you dive bot lane. And then once at like 5:30, you kind of just see like top lane dives happen before top laners are hitting level 6, followed by the mid roams, who's usually level 6 because you hit level 6 first on mid lane because like that's how the wave's going. And it just like seems like a really strong just meta in general for G2 because their players are just so individually good that they're literally winning every single lane. Ankos can do whatever he wants to do in the early game. And, obviously we're saying that because they played, weaker opponents in EG and Order in this group. And it'll probably be a different story against teams like RNG and teams like T1. But in this case, the laners are allowed to do whatever they want. And basically G2 just gets to choose what they want to do almost every single game. And you saw them like they were playing whatever they wanted. Like Broken Blade was he played a Yone top game, he played like a tank Scion game, he played a
BB's
Vlad
always been
game.
like that though, right? Like he's always played different stuff.
Yeah,
Like
I know,
that's
but
just the kind of
but
player
but
Broken
but
Blade
even
is.
Yankos as well. Like he's playing tanks, he's playing carries. Like we saw the Nidalee come out, we saw Sejuani come out. Like those are like some classic Yankos champions. And then their bot lane is also just insane. Like Flacket and Targamas look really really good. I don't think they're necessarily the strongest in terms of like 2v2 laning, while they are like pretty good. But I think their strength definitely comes from like team fighting because Flacket is making like very minimal mistakes in team fights and hitting a lot of his skill shots when he's playing a champion like
Ezreal
Ezreal,
looks
and
pretty good. Yeah.
Targamas's Pike looks pretty disgusting as well. So
Yeah.
G2 is looking really good.
It's one of those things where it's actually very similar because we said after watching the finals weekend of LCS, we said like Danny and Vulcan look great right now, but when they go up against better teams, we're gonna like it's not gonna be so easy. And so I think it's kind of that similar thing where it's like we're seeing G2's bot lane pop off, and they're playing great. However, they're not going to be able to do that so freely when they're playing the RNGs or the T1s, right? Which again is no hot take, but that's just the reality. Like that's just the truth, right? It applies the same way to G2 the way it applied to EG coming into this tournament, and obviously we're seeing EG's bot lane kind of struggle. The thing is, not even just in lane though. Like normally it was just in lane when it came to like the LCS finals weekend, but like even out of lane they don't really look too great. And every time I bring this up, I always say that I hate to have to be picky about someone's skill shots because I just don't like to do it. But specifically the Tom Kench game from Vulcan, like there's so many tongue lashes that I'm like, man, if he lands that tongue lash, they actually get this kill here. So I every time I bring up skill shots, I hate saying it, but I have to be honest, he needs to land more of those. The other thing too is like there's obviously the throw, like the game where G2 like hard threw at Baron and kind of gifted EG the game, and then Jojo Pin lands the sleep, and then Danny arcane shifts and Qs forward to stop the sleep and kind of throws that game that was gifted to them. Like there were some big mistakes made out of the EG bot lane that like I expect they should be better. I really do. Am I crazy, Jinter?
Yeah, I don't know. To me, it just felt like kind of from the EG side of things. Like I thought that for the like obviously the mid lane matchup, while I think Caps was really was doing a lot of work in that series. Like I don't think
Caps
JoJo.
outroamed him. He had better wave management. He had better team fighting. Like
Yeah, but
JoJo was just gapped by Caps, honestly.
yeah, but I don't think it was a situation where like JoJo Pune is playing like shit and Caps is just like shitting on him and then shitting on the game because of that. I think it was a situation where like Caps is just clearly like his knowledge of what to do, and in these specific situations, like he knows exactly what he wants to do, when he wants to push his waves, and when he wants to roam. And he was just kind of like abusing JoJo Pune's like, what's the word, like,
lack of experience.
Yeah, I guess like it was pretty clear to me that like this was JoJo Pune's first like appearance on an international stage, and
Oh
it's still
yeah,
his
to be
rookie
clear,
split.
I'm not flaming JoJo at all. I'm just saying how it went. That's all. I
Yeah,
have no problem with how JoJo Pyun's playing. He is a young player. No one's gonna fault him for getting destroyed by Caps, right?
yeah, no,
But if he gets
I
destroyed
think
by
that
Caps, I gotta point it out.
Impact looked pretty solid for the most part. Like I know I've said this before. Like I'm not worried about him. I thought he held his own for the most part. I thought Inspired was actually playing. He had a pretty good group overall. Yeah, sure, the G2 games didn't necessarily go his way, but he was like stomping Order almost every single game, and even the Lilia game that he had against G2 was pretty good.
I thought Inspired has actually had a great tournament so
Yeah,
far. If I'm looking at a guy who played well from EG, it's Inspired for sure,
yeah.
100%.
To me, it just felt like for EG, like their bot lane just wasn't popping off, and that was fairly often their win condition in the LCS, especially in their playoff run, was Danny's just ability to pop off and kind of thrive in the chaos of these team fights. But like that's what G2 is known for, is like thriving in these chaotic games and chaotic team fights, and you saw that in a lot of these G2 versus EG games.
Yeah, the only thing that I think I differ on you from your opinion is specifically in the top lane. I think Broken Blade got the better of Impact in 3 of the 4 games, so that's where I feel like I still think it was a little bit more lopsided towards G2 side was in top lane, even though I believe there was one game, I can't remember which game it was, where Impact did kind of outplay Broken Blade, but
The
I think for the
Gangplank
most part
game.
it might have been. I don't remember, but it was the other way around for 3 of the 4. And so I don't really look at the Order games to get any information. No offense to Order, but I mean, I said that I thought they were going to go 0-8, and I don't think that's any crazy take. I think most people also expected them to go 0-8, right? This is a really difficult group for Order, for the record. I know a lot of people know that already, but this is what is supposed to be the worst region in the world. We said that last week, and this is what happens when you go up against. I mean, you could call NA major region, you can meme it that it's not a major region, but let's be real. These are 2 of the top 4 regions in the world, and Order has no business beating them. So I don't take away much from the games that were played against Order. So my focus was mainly on G2 and EG.
Yeah, I mean, Order, they didn't really even have like a close game. Like,
Oh,
I don't know. Like,
okay.
I don't like it. Just like they were just clearly outclassed. Like, I don't know. Like, sucks to say, because I think in the
No.
case of, look at some of the other groups. Istanbul Wildcats were able to win a game. Even A's was able to win a game off of DFN. DFN won a game. Red Canids, like, they put up a decent performance. Like, I think it was fairly clear. When you look at the rest of these groups and all the rest of the teams, that Order was clearly the weakest one. And like you said, I think we expected that coming in because of their regional strength and sort of what happened at the end of season 10 and just OS in general. So sucks for them. It sucks they couldn't even win one game, and I think it felt equally as bad when you're in the group of 3 teams and you start the second round robin, and once you lose that first game, you're playing 3 more meaningless games where you're still just like getting destroyed.
Yeah, but the thing is though, and I know that this is the case for guys that are like that commit their careers to playing this game. Even if you're out, they still want to win. Like there is pride of not of picking up that one win because it's against 2 teams that you're not supposed to pick up that win against. Like you want to show that you have something. So even though yeah, it sucks that their games technically didn't mean anything to them, you know that they're still hungry for the win. So I don't think there's ever any doubt there. The last thing that I'll say on this group, specifically with EG, was I noticed their playstyle hasn't really changed, where they will sacrifice those early dragons for like rotating their bot lane topside to grab plates or to grab turret or whatever it may be. And we saw that most teams in the LCS didn't have success when they didn't play around drag, but I actually don't mind when EG plays this style. I think that is very much how they need to play. We've seen them put so many resources into Danny, and that's how they win. And that's something they've continued in this tournament, I've noticed, and I think that they actually should continue. Even if they weren't able to take any wins off of G2, I still think that's their best chance of winning. And I know you've always been a big drag guy, JT, so the reason I bring it up is because I wanted to see if you agreed with that or if you disagree with that notion that they should sacrifice the dragons or not.
I would say that there's nothing wrong with that strategy. I think that's a very viable strategy in general, because I think that's what the meta sort of used to be. Kind of at the beginning of season 11 was teams would actually, would prefer to sack the first 2 dragons in favor of going for Rift Heralds and then turning those Rift Heralds into tower plates. And you would see on average some sort of like 2 dragon for like 2 to 3k gold lead type of trade. And
Yeah.
I think for EG, it works to their benefit a little bit, especially when they were doing their run in the LCS playoffs, where they were sacrificing a lot of early dragons. Even in some cases, and even in their series against Cloud9, I'll remind people, they gave up like 2 souls in that
Yeah.
series, but still won the games. And I just think in the case of using that strategy and exclusively using that strategy at MSI against these much better teams in G2, RNG, and T1, I think while, like I said before, it's a viable strategy and it can work, it's a little bit more risky because the teams in G2, RNG, and T1 are less likely to make some of these mistakes in the mid and late game when it comes to their team fighting, their objective control, their setup. Like, it's very unlikely that someone's going to get picked randomly in a side lane because, like, good teams, that doesn't really happen to them because they're good teams. So
Yeah, that's a very good point, honestly.
it's
The
just
point,
it seems like a little bit more risky, but it doesn't. Like, I wouldn't say it's like bad. Don't ever do that. It's just like if you're going to do that, then you got to make sure that what you're trading for is actually worth it, where you get sort of some substantial gold value out of it, and that you can properly, set up and contest and fight these drags when you might be down 2 or 3 drags to none, and you're going to have to fight every single one after for the rest of the game.
yeah, I want to add on to your point a little bit because like I said, I do think they should continue to play this style if that's their style. But one thing that I think you were kind of making the point of is that if you only play that style, teams know what you're going to do, which is not exactly always the greatest thing. So maybe having more than one strat is would be beneficial for them. That's just a devil's advocate take, but I think it's a fair point to make. But again, Danny plays like the Jinx, who obviously can take plates very well, and Tristana, another one that's really good at taking towers. So that's how they play it to their benefit when they're playing those AD carries, and they're just basically funneling Danny. Um, Okay, now with all of the top teams going undefeated and going 23-0, I think that's one of the biggest reasons why we're seeing more MSI format discussion this year than normal. I think there's always format discussion, but I think it's more amplified this year with, well, to be frank, just how boring the group stage was. Like, you didn't get to see any other good teams play against other good teams. The only thing that was kind of close was, I guess, maybe RNG and PSG could have been closer, and then maybe G2 and EG could have been closer, but still they weren't really all that close. And so you just had this, well, obviously, like I said, you have this scenario where everyone's undefeated, all the top seeds. And so I think people were a little bit bored with this group stage, and I was definitely one of those people as well.
Yeah, I can't remember if the reason that they made MSI this format was because they did that in season 11 when the VCS wasn't able to attend, and they had to find some different format for 11 teams instead of 12 teams. Because if people can recall, the previous MSI tournament format was the top team from the LCK, the LPL, the LEC, and the LCS would auto qualify to the Rumble stage, along with, I guess it was at the time, the number 1 seed from the LMS would also qualify to the Rumble stage. And then you would have a play-in tournament for all of the minor regions or emerging regions, as you would call them, the LLA, the LJL, the VCS at the time, whatever it would have been, like the CIS, the CB LOL.
We get it.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
get it.
And all of those teams would battle it out with, they would have their own group stage into elimination bracket with that one team who makes it out, joins the rest of the teams in the Rumble stage, and then it was as follows: group of 6, you play it out, top 4 go to, semifinals and finals. And I think from Riot's perspective, one of the reasons they made this change was because they wanted to evolve, all the major regions and all the major teams earlier on in the tournament. Because
it's very simple. You
it
want
makes
T1
sense.
to be playing games.
It makes sense just from the outside. It's like, oh, people like T1, oh, people like RNG, oh, people like G2. Well, let's just put them in games earlier into the tournament. And I think, in theory, that makes a lot of sense. And I don't think you could argue with that, theory and thought process for the most part. But in actuality, when you see these games taking place, it becomes very clear from the get-go who the favorites are in the groups and who the struggling teams are. It was very clear cut this sort of go around at MSI where G2 was 8-0, EG was 4-4, Order was 0-8. And, T1 was 6-0, Saigon Buffalo was 4-2, and Ace and DFM ended up being 1-5. And similarly with RNG, they were 6-0, PSG Talon was 3-3, and I think, Canids were 2-4, and Wildcats were 1-5. But it was very clear that in this group, there was a 1, 2, 3, and 4, or a 1, 2, and 3 in the order of how you would rank the teams. And it can get quite boring when you're on the second round robin and you're seeing G2 in Order for the fourth time, and you know that Order has like no chance to win the game, and it's just like, well, why am I even watching this game as a viewer now? Because I know what's going to happen before the game even starts.
Yeah, literally every game in Group C went the way it was supposed to go. Like there was
Yeah.
no upsets. So like, okay. So should the format change, JNT? And if so, what do you think should be changed?
I mean, I would just go back to the old format. Like, I don't,
Yeah.
in terms of the, tournament and how, like, if it was a competitive tournament or not, like, that was like, I always thought MSI was fine like that. Like, the top team from every region goes, and the minor regions or emerging regions are clearly a level below all of the major regions. And I don't think that anyone, even now, would still question that. Obviously there are some outliers like Albus Nox Luna in 2016, or Gigabyte Marines in 2017, or I don't know, DFM in 2018 even, or 2020, 2021 at MSI, like whatever you want to say. But it's clear that the major regions are the major region teams for a reason, and the minor regions are minor regions for a reason. And to sort of match them up right at the beginning of the tournament just feels kind of bad for the viewer. Like, it's like, oh, wow, another 25-minute game where T1 is like 14-0 up in kills.
Yeah. And the problem is, and like we mentioned though, if you do that, then you don't have your T1 playing. You don't have RNG. You don't have G2 like. That is kind of a problem from the tournament's point
But
of view.
for
Like,
for the benefit
all
of
the
the
teams that are really popular aren't playing now, and so yes. But to your point, for the benefit of the tournament being more competitive and for the games being competitive, you think the trade off is worth.
yeah, but even for the benefit of like the minor regions, where they actually have like a competitive section of the tournament where they're going to see their favorite team compete with teams of a similar skill level.
Yeah.
Like, if you know I would have been pretty excited to see what like Istanbul Wildcats versus Detonation Focus Me would have been like, even if it was only for one game, or like seeing all of the play-in teams maybe play each other one time, but they just everyone plays each other one time, so they would have like 8 games with all of them playing each other one time. Like, that would have been kind of exciting. So I don't think we need to see these same like repeat matches, especially at the beginning when we have clearly very strong teams and clearly very weak teams, because I think you can kind of just shorten the number of games there. And what people want more of is the games between like a T1 and an RNG, or a T1 and a G2. So if you had to make like any big sweeping changes, if you want to compare it to the old format, maybe make the Rumble stage more games and shorten the duration of the play-in tournament, or, however you want to frame it. Because what's the exciting part for MSI for a lot of people is, obviously the knockout stage when it comes to best of fives, but it's also the best of ones between all of the major regions. Like, I remember like 2019 MSI when like T1, or I guess they were SKT at the time, played IG, and they won that game in like 14 minutes, where I think somebody was playing Draven. I don't remember if Jackie Love was playing Draven, or if who would have T1's, if Teddy at the time was playing Draven. But I remember that was a hype ass game, and I wish we had more of those instead of fucking random game like Istanbul Wildcats versus Red Candids, and they're just not even going to make it out of the group in the first place.
The one format that I want to throw out there, and this is not my idea for the record, it's the one that's on Reddit right now. I didn't have a lot of time to look at it. I just saw it right before we went live. But someone threw out the idea of just having 2 groups, and then top 2 teams go to like a winners bracket. The 3 and 4 go to a losers bracket, and then the bottom 2 are knocked out. So 2 groups of 6 and 6, right? Assuming that everyone can show up. And I thought that was interesting. Now, I don't know how that works as far as like how many games are played in that format and if all the logistics make sense. But it was an answer to the episode of the Chat Leesman experience that I was talking about earlier, where they said like if there's anyone that could come up with some ideas, we want to hear them. So it was just a post to that. Again, I didn't get to read the whole Reddit post, but on the surface, it looked like a pretty good idea. After this episode, I'm going to go and do a little bit more digging and see if I actually think it's a good idea. But just something that I thought on the surface looked interesting. So I thought I would shout out that Reddit post for those that saw it or didn't see it. I guess go have a look at it.
And another alternative that was also sort of brought up by Treats on Twitter, which has even been an idea that I think the majority of esports fans just kind of want, no matter what, whether it's MSI or whatever, is a League World Cup. And it feels like that's been something that's been talked about for like 4 years now. I think I can go as far back to like 2018 when people started to actually bring that up and say like, oh, we should actually have this, because it feels like, there's enough players in all of these different countries actually facilitate a pretty competitive tournament. And I think that'd be a great idea, like to have a LoL World Cup, and like that sounds like a lot of fun.
So I've said this to you before that like as far as MSI is concerned, I'm not the biggest fan of MSI. Now that doesn't mean I hate MSI, but like a lot of people see MSI as like, not that far off from Worlds or like a mini Worlds. To me, it's like it's not even close. Like I love Worlds so much more than I like MSI. So if they were to make the change, I wouldn't mind it. However, even though my answer is, do I want them to do this? My answer is yes, absolutely yes. There's a lot of things that are in the way for like how this could be done. A couple of issues that come to mind are what does spring split what does winning spring split now get you, right? If you win spring split as EG, your reward is to go to MSI. Well, if it's a World Cup, there's none of that anymore. So my worry there is like, okay, well, we're right back to spring split doesn't matter memes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something to worry about. Um, Another thing is like, when would the tournament be held if it's not replacing MSI, right? Like let's say they want to keep MSI but also do a World Cup. When in the year are you going to do this? Because there's not a lot of time to squeeze in a whole nother tournament, right? So I think that's another issue. The other thing, and I'm sure there's probably other things that I'm missing, but the last thing that comes to mind is like, how are you going to get the LCS, the LEC, or the LPL teams to go along with this, right? Because there's always discussion around teams getting burnt out, for example, after MSI. Well, it's like now, like some of those players are going to get burnt out, I guess in air quotes, at this World Cup tournament, but like your EG won't even get the benefits of having their team name on the event. You know what I'm saying? So it's like you're letting your players go, which this happens all the time for the Olympics. Like I remember there was a lot of discussion that NHL teams, like I follow hockey, right? So I know that a lot of NHL teams don't like their players going to the Olympics, although they still do let them sometimes. But like that's another issue, right? Is like now you have to sell all of the leagues on why this is a good idea to cancel a tournament for their teams. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I guess
that's a tough sell.
just on that point quickly, like I think it would just be something simple as like an opt-in, opt-out. Like if you're a player on a top team at your region, presumably you would be a player potentially to be selected on that World Cup roster for your country. Let's just use Faker as an example. Like
Yeah.
he might be the the starting mid laner for the South Korean team. And if he says no, then he says no. And then, like, guess what? Like, in terms of Korean mid laners, like, there's a long list of them that'll play at a very high level. So I think an opt-in, opt-out thing would just make a lot of sense in terms of if you're...
the players would want to go. It's whether the teams would let their players go. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
That's the only issue that I see there. So, like, the World Cup idea, like, let's be real, it would be freaking sweet, right? Like, wouldn't that be awesome? Like, I don't care if Team Canada's going to get clapped. I want to see Team Canada play. Let's go. Jojo Pyun, Wild Turtle, I don't know who else. I'm sure that there. Yeah, Vulcan would be there for sure. Who else would it be?
I remember Onda's Canadian, but that was like he's like I don't even know who plays League anymore.
Tell me there's
Licorice Top.
Yeah, Licorice. I know Smoothie's also Canadian. Biofrost is Canadian, so there's a few supports.
Get 5 supports.
I know there's another jungler, but I don't remember. Anyways, it'd be sweet. And honestly, I would even like to see who the US puts out there. Like, I would cheer for Team USA as long as they're not playing Canada, of course. I would cheer for that. Like, that'd be sweet. And even the other thing, too, is I would love, even if it was just a European thing, even if just Europe did this, I would love to cheer. Like, I'm part French and part English. I would cheer for the UK and for France, right? I think that would be fun too. So I don't know when you could squeeze in these tournaments if you're keeping MSI. But I guess what I'm saying is I would be interested. I don't know how they get it done, but I would definitely be interested.
Yeah, I mean, I think people will. I mean, I guess haters will just say like, "Well, China and Korea are obviously going to win." It's like, yeah, like that probably will happen, but
that's what happens at MSI anyway.
But I think the part of the thing that makes it exciting and worthwhile to watch is like you are going to have teams be divided by country now, and you're going to see players that normally would never play together play on a team. And then in the case of MSI, like just comparing it to MSI, in MSI you have one NA, one EU, one Korean, one Chinese, whereas now you actually just have a bunch of teams from a bunch of regions, because when it comes to NA, you're going to have US and Canada. And when it comes to Europe, you're going to have a long list of them.
Mexico.
True. True.
Quas? Is he Mexican or is he? Is
I think
he might be
he's
Venezuelan?
Colombian. I thought he's Colombian.
Oh, okay. He's from I just remember his ping is really high, so I know he's a lot more southern than Mexico.
But
On
either way, you get a lot more regional representatives, and not well, obviously that's not like region based on the league, but like
yeah.
if you're an NA fan and you like NA, whether or not you're an EG fan, you might be cheering for them because they're from NA, and well, guess what? Now you have all these other teams to cheer for potentially.
Yeah, and I saw in the replies someone made the point that like for soccer or football, European football, they basically only do the World Cup every 4 years, right? So maybe that's something that could happen.
Yeah.
But again, lots of logistics to figure out. But in short, the idea sounds really fun, and I think there would be a lot of interest. I mean, we've already seen with the ERLs how teams can get hella hype for those, right? Like, there's a lot of viewership for that.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to watch a European, like a Euro Cup sort of thing of league, or even if it was just a Western Cup, that'd be cool too. Like,
didn't they? Oh my
god,
God, what was it called? They had one in season 3. What was it called?
Oh, did they?
Yeah,
I don't know.
it was like
San Jose.
no. It's gonna.
I'm not being serious, dude.
It was like Battle of the Atlantic or something. Now remember this?
No kidding. I don't.
Bro, like
I don't remember anything from like I don't even know. Not even long ago.
yeah, it was.
Okay.
Called, I'm pretty sure it was called Battle of the Atlantic.
That sounds sweet to me. Let's make it happen. The thing is, all those tournaments, I don't even know if MSI existed back then, right? So it probably would have been around the same time as MSI.
No, it happened. It happened. In between. It happened after season 3 Worlds, before the start of the next split. It's the Battle of Atlantic 2013 was an offline tournament featuring the top 5 season 3 summer playoff teams from EU and NA.
I see. Well, bring it back, baby.
Dude, I remember that was hype. Like,
was it? Okay, then.
well, I didn't watch it, but I went back and watched it when I was first getting into League, and it was like they had a bunch of random teams. Like, I think like Doublelift was like on that on CLG, and C9 was there, and like Mithy was there before he got banned and was on Lemon Dogs. And
was that where there was a CLG EU in that, or was that a different tournament?
CLG EU, I think, was a season. I think they were only there in season 2, so I don't think so.
Okay.
I think CLG EU was only happened during season 2, but I'm not sure.
My competitive League of Legends history is not up to par, so my bad. I know I was watching the games back then, but couldn't tell you what the hell happened. Not a clue.
Yeah, it was only during season 2, CLG EU.
Gotcha. All right. Well, let's get on to MSI Rumble stage now. I don't think we need to go on too long about this, but it is usually the thing is we talk about like format changes and the MSI maybe being replaced by World Cup idea, but like I feel like it's really easy for those ideas to come up right now after group stage of MSI because like it's pretty boring.
Because it sucked balls.
Yeah, and but like Rumble stage is pretty damn good though. Like Rumble stage is when the tournament. That's when the tournament gets good, right? So let's talk about this, and maybe the opinions of people change once Rumble stage happens because maybe we get some hella hype games against obviously some much higher skilled teams. So let's just get into it. JT, who do you think is finishing first in the Rumble stage?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think my opinions really haven't changed at all after the group stage.
Neither of mine.
Because just everything was so one-sided, and I don't think we really learned anything about any specific team. The only thing maybe that we learned is like Saigon Buffalo is better than we thought, and actually has a chance, to have a chance to make it out of the group. It's probably a small chance, but better than nothing. Which
maybe
I think
PSG as well is maybe not as good as we thought.
Yeah.
Right?
So if I had to pick right now, I think T1's still the favorite. But I'm still going to roll with the thing that I said last week where I don't think that G2 is too far behind RNG. So I really expect it to be a tough battle for second place between G2 and RNG. And, I don't think first place is locked up by T1 for any means because they've said it themselves that like G2 is a team that they really want to beat. And, G2 has gotten the better of T1 over, since 2019, where they beat them at MSI in semifinals and they beat them in world semifinals. And that's like it's a matchup that Faker really wants to win. And I don't think it's out of the question that G2 could beat T1, and I don't think it's out of the question that RNG can beat T1. So, T1's the favorite, and I think they should finish first. I don't think it's going to be a 10-0 sweep. I'll say that.
Yeah, I don't think G2 is as close as you do, but I don't think our opinions differ very much because I do 100% agree that G2 can take games off of any team in this tournament, right? So I wouldn't be like super shocked if G2 beat them, but I do still think there is a little bit of a gap between RNG and G2. As you mentioned, you don't. So I think
I
that's where we differ a little bit there. But as far as teams getting out of the group, so I guess T1, RNG, G2, and then what, EG for you? Or do
Yeah,
you
well,
have.
I guess I just said at the beginning I don't think the groups actually changed my opinions, but that was actually wrong because I think before the tournament I probably would have put PSG Talon ahead of EG, and now I think I'm putting EG ahead of PSG Talon.
Fair enough. Yeah, because
So,
PSG Talon did beat Cloud9 last year, right?
yep.
For that spot? Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
actually, they technically finished third in that group, so was like fighting with Mad Lions, but whatever. They went 6 and
And
4. They were actually like pretty decent. They beat RNG
okay,
one
so
time.
we both are giving EG the chance to improve, if you
Yeah.
will. I mean, even if they don't improve,
How?
maybe
Yeah,
they're still good enough.
I was gonna say. However, I think that like 4, 5, and 6 is all very close between
Yeah,
EG,
I
Saigon
agree.
Buffalo, and PSG. While I
Which
would
is
give
healthy,
EG the
right?
upper hand.
Like, even though we mentioned that the group stage is kind of shit and not exactly healthy for entertainment value, I think we are at the point where like Rumble stage is very healthy. Like, we don't know 4, 5, 6, which is pretty good. And I guess you could argue by that note that you don't really know 1, 2, or 3 in your point. For me, I don't really know 1, 2. So anyway, that makes the Rumble stage really interesting. Anything else on the Rumble stage? Anything you want to look out for? I don't really have much else to say that we haven't already said in the past.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I just think G2 versus T1 is going to be exciting. I hope they make that the
Yeah.
first game. They haven't released the schedule, but they're supposed to start on Friday. But I would just hope that Riot does this
Just to be clear,
nice
because
with the
you're on the
schedule.
West Coast now, I don't want people to get confused. Is it starting on Friday at like 11 p.m. your time, which is Saturday for some people,
No, I'm
or
pretty
like?
sure it's like
Okay,
Friday. Like,
okay. It'd be nice if LOL Esports could just update the damn schedule. I just didn't want to confuse people and have them think the games are at a different time. You know what I'm saying?
well, like, yeah,
Let's just put
it's
this out there now, guys. Don't trust us on when the games are because we don't freaking know. Just keep an eye on
it's
LOL
Friday.
Esports or something for them to ever actually say, okay, it's Friday. JNT's pretty confident it's Friday, so blame
Yeah,
him if he's wrong. Okay,
that's fine.
let's move on to quick news.
Yeah, we got some quick news. Not really. It's kind of just like follow up to what we talked about last week with a lot of the roster
Mm-hmm.
moves because as the off season for the teams that aren't on MSI progresses, things get confirmed, roster rumors get like official or scrapped. So C9, basically right as MSI started, officially announced their roster, which was the presumed roster of Jensen mid, Fudge roll swap back to top, and Sven support. And they also announced their
With
boot
Blubber and
camping.
Berserker.
Yeah, obviously. And then they announced that they're boot camping in Korea. And I've been seeing just like a lot of stuff on Twitter over like the last week about a lot of the NA teams are boot camping in Korea. I know
Mm-hmm.
100 Thieves went, TL went, C9 went, FlyQuest is going, Dignitas is going. I think CLG is also going. EG's at MSI, obviously, but like that's at least 7 out of the 10 teams that are doing like a major boot camp over in Korea. So, boot camping is always good. I think it's, for the most part, teams that usually go over in boot camp, you know, don't look like garbage and are actually like pretty decent teams. So
So, do you know when they're coming back? Like, because this might make sense as to why Champions Queue is closed until the end of May. Maybe they knew that all these teams were going away until the end of May. Perhaps I'm
maybe, I
just
don't know.
trying to line up the logic if it does line up.
Well, I think it
'Cause
also
I
just
remember
makes
thinking
sense
like, why is
because teams are going to be able to scrim the MSI teams as well.
right? But I just remember thinking like, why is Champions Queue closed until May 31st or whatever it was? And this could be the reason why. I'm just trying to make sense of. Maybe I'm thinking too far ahead here. What did you think of Cloud9's announcement video? I kind of liked it.
Yeah, it was funny.
Yeah, I liked it. The one thing that I will admit, I was like, did he just say what I think he said? In the video where he's like, for Fudge referred to Sneaky as our assistant. And I was like, wait, what do you mean? What do you mean your assistant? Assistant coach? But they didn't, they would have made it really clear if Sneaky was actually going to be an
Oh,
assistant coach,
Sneaky's a
right?
streamer, bro.
I know, but I was like, they would have made it clear. I'm pretty sure they would have made it clear if he was actually an assistant coach. But like, I thought for sure I was gonna see in the comment sections like, what do you mean assistant? But anyway.
Mm.
Sometimes the mind sees what it wants to see, you know.
Yep. Next up, Vitality over in the LEC are signing junglers Haru and Bo. Haru, former Samsung Galaxy jungler, played for Gen G at some point. Don't really know where he's been since then. But they're also signing Bo, FPX jungler substitute, rumored to potentially join TSM. So Spica's job is safe for now, at least. And this
Didn't
was
TSM already announce though? Is that
yeah, they did. Oh, that's true. They'd already announced their roster.
yeah?
So, but either
Yeah.
way, Bo going to Vitality, and in the upcomer article, they basically said that Bo is gonna like be the substitute for this upcoming summer split and get his work visa and start to learn English and then become the starter in 2023. And for them to just come out and say like that their plan is for Bo to be the starter in 2023 would make me think that even if Vitality fails this year, um, fails, whether that's doesn't make Worlds, goes to Worlds but bombs out, or I guess in the case if they succeed, they go to Worlds and are successful, that they probably plan to keep this quote unquote super team around at
Or at the
least.
very least, they have an idea of what their roster's going to
Yeah,
be, right?
or at the least keep a Perks or an Alfari or a Karzi type of player, like maybe not all three, but two of the three, or at the very least one out of three of them. So hearing that their plan is for him, that they're requiring him and then going to make him the starter in 2023 makes me think that Perks or Alfari are probably sticking around. One of or both of them for 2023.
That was a standout for me as well, because that is a little strange for them to announce that early. Like the year isn't over yet.
Yeah, a lot can
Kind
change,
of
bro.
strange. Yeah. Like that's something that you could just say, "Oh, he's our substitute right now," and leave it at that. It is weird that they went ahead and announced already.
Yeah.
But I guess things could change, right? They could always be like, "Oh, actually, Bo is cheating again." Bye. Like I don't know. Oh, Bo's actually a serial killer, so never mind. You know.
Serial killer. Jesus.
Yeah. Well, you got to use extreme examples. Everyone knows I'm fucking around. Okay, what else?
Last up, the Unicorns of Love Sexy Edition is signing Winsome. Yeah, if you don't know why I said Sexy Edition, is because
That's
they're
the name.
but the Unicorns of Love, the normal Unicorns of Love, they compete over in the CIS, which is the Russian league, and the Unicorns of Love Sexy Edition are a German regional league team. They like compete in EU Masters, and in that league, they this team they just finished like 5th at EU Masters or something. I remember I looked at the wiki really quickly, but yeah, Winsome, he found a home. Pretty random,
That is random. I thought the same thing.
Random
like,
as fuck.
I would have never predicted that. I would have thought, oh, Winsome would go back to Korea because he speaks Korean,
or he would join an NA Academy team or something.
The thing is, even though he's going to Germany, like all the teams, they all speak English. I'm pretty sure, right? So it's like, I guess if he started learning English in NA, it's not like he has to learn another language. I don't think. I guess don't quote me on that, but I don't think he has to now learn German.
I don't know.
Yeah. Guess not my area of expertise, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I would just assume that English is what you need to get by there. Okay, I think that's it, J&T.
Yep.
Did we finally have a short episode for first time in ever?
Yeah, depends on how long you continue to ramble on, but
yeah, I know we. All right, that is it though for this one, guys. Okay, we believe our next episode is supposed to be on Wednesday. We think next week.
Yes,
because the games are supposed to go Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Correct?
Yep.
For Rumble Stage, that is. So the plan for now, guys, is for our next episode to come out on Wednesday. So I mean, look, things could always change, but that's the plan for now. Anything else to mention, J&T?
No, I think that's it.
I have to remind you guys to hit that subscribe button if you didn't do that.
Yeah, do that. What's wrong with you?
Yeah, hit that button. What is wrong with you?
Just click a button. Just click it.
All right, that's it. And enjoy the not the group stage, enjoy the Rumble stage, guys. This is where the tournament should start to get a lot better. If you were a little bit bored with group stage, trust the process. Games are about to get good. All right, that's it, guys. We'll see you guys next time. This has been episode 85 of the Clown Fiesta podcast.